All right, man. This is episode 43 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Saturday, January 21st, 2023 at 12:26 p.m. It snowed last night, so there's a great whole trail of white out there. On my way in back from the cinema last night, I saw a whole family of deer, man, and if that doesn't lift your spirits, man, I don't know what will. Got the cat over here sleeping, looking out at the people passing by, but ultimately relaxed and is gonna succumb back to the slumber pretty soon. How's your guys' week been? You guys been working on what you needed to work on? Working on your goals, your dreams, your passions, whatever it is, man, that you wanted to do. You better get started on it, because you don't know what's gonna happen, man. Anything can happen, so why wait when you can just do it right now? As I almost knock everything over. Jeez Louise, man. Plenty of great films watched this past week. Man, there's a lot to get into. I was happy to see the new Sarah Polley directed film Women Talking last night. Very good film. Enjoyed it quite a bit. I try not to be too negative on the show, but if there was one thing I can't for the life of me figure out why they chose this artistic choice. I didn't frame it the best way, but you get what I'm saying. There's a very bleak gray color palette to the film, whose symbolism is as obvious as a sun on a hot day. But holy moly, man, watching that theatrically, it did not look good, man. It is one of the ugliest looking things I had ever seen in my life, man. It was not a good choice to do that. And it's a shame because the film I think is very solid. I think the performances across the board are good. It's a film like this that feels like a play, and it feels like when you're first watching it takes a little bit of time to adjust. Some of the performances came off as a bit melodramatic, and ultimately, not ultimately, I apologize. Initially, I wasn't exactly sure how to feel about them, primarily from Claire Foy and Jesse Buckley, two actors who I think are both very good. Initially, both of their performances were very one note for me, and I was thinking, oh no, is this going to be the film? These very melodramatic, over the top performances, but I was proven wrong as the film continues on because as it goes on, while there are some melodramatic and cliched moments of dialogue, very obvious sequences that don't feel entirely fleshed out in terms of backstory, in terms of it feels at times like what's the word I'm trying to look for here? It feels very obvious at times, but I'm not gonna rail into the film or anything like that. I think it's a very good film. It's great to have Sarah Polley return. I think her last film was Stories We Tell, the documentary from I believe 2014. This was also written by Miriam Toews or Towes, however you say their name, and I'm not familiar with. Okay, so this is I guess wrote the screenplay as well based off of her book. Actually, I think this may have been. Now, I was a little. I think this was inspired by true events. I'm not actually sure how true the event is. I thought this was based off a New York Times article or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But either way, solid film across the board. All the performances as it goes along is it's solid, man. The primary main characters in the film are actors, along with Frances McDormand, some newcomers in the film who I wasn't familiar with, who I apologize I don't have their names up right now. Ben Whishaw, who has a small part in the film but is very good. He's a bit of a background character, but ultimately contributes well enough to the plot. It's a very good film, and that's why a film like this in lesser hands could have become very much more cliche, much more obvious, Oscar fare, Oscar baits, if you want to. And this isn't that. It's a well done film, but my God, man, that I don't know who the hell chose this color palette. I was talking to an acquaintance of mine, and I'm thinking you should have just made it in black and white at that point because my gosh, geez Louise, on a big screen, it does not look well. It does not look well at all. It was giving me flashbacks to Reflections in a Golden Eye, the Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor film. Robert Forster as well in a small part, and that's one of the ugliest looking films I've ever seen. It's also not a very good film in my opinion, but My gosh, man, I don't know who made that decision. But great film nonetheless. Recommended. Great to have Sarah Polley back, and I hope she does more films or whatever it is in the near future. And great performances across the board. Solid, worth your time, man. Really enjoyed the film. Wrapping up the year from last year, a lot of these films that I've been seeing of late, I'm not exactly sure if they qualify as 2022 or 23 films. Ultimately, that doesn't totally matter. But some of these films that I see late into the year from the previous year, it's a little bit hard to make something a little more comprehensive. Not that a best of or a favorite list will never be comprehensive unless you somehow saw every single film from a certain year released everywhere. But that is just time I do not have, and I imagine that most people do not want to put that time in, rightfully so, because you're cutting yourself off from so many other great films by solely focusing on one year. But I think back to a film that I didn't see until November that was released here, Matthew and Malrick's Hold Me Tight, which was a 2021 film. And if I had made that list earlier, the 2021 list earlier in 2022, then I would have been excluding a film that was just incredible. So, with that said, though, I still need to release the episode that I intended to, the 10 underseen films of 2022 video or episode, however you want to put it. I actually have the list on my phone right here along with some honorable mentions. Actually, a lot of honorable mentions. So I'm going to try to get that out when I have the availability and when I have the time, as well as another video about first time watches of 2022. All in due time, though. There's so much to do, and there's truly just not enough time to do it, but we make do with the time that we have, man. And that's all we can really focus on, is just doing what we want to do while we still have the time to do it, and not falling down and succumbing to just nonsense, just nonsense social interactions, situations, talking about the weather, talking about just a bunch of nonsense, sitting around watching mindless TV, and to each their own, but I don't got time for that kind of stuff, man. Got all this stuff to do, man. Plenty of watching and reading and writing to get done. I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was from or what the podcast was, but they had brought up an interesting point when it came to writing that really kind of stuck with me in terms of going into the new year. I forgot who it was, but they were talking about how the idea of, for one, specifically about writing, whatever that is, right? I mean, I'm gonna go back on that. Not specifically about writing, specifically about working on your art, that is. But in the context, it was about writing, where people have this idea that you need to be doing something again and again and again. In terms of writing, it is, they were talking about the idea of writing every single day, and how they were coming from the point of view of, they felt like when they missed a day or they didn't contribute as much on a certain day or whoever it is, they felt like they had not met up to their expectations. And they basically were just getting rid of all that nonsense. They were saying that putting in the time and having constructive writing was far better than mindless writing. And that's not verbatim, that's my own words being put into it, but it was a solid point, because what I was thinking of is that from own personal experience of recent memory is that, so the writing I've been working on, I had a stretch where I was getting a lot of words out, man. It was great. I mean, truly wasn't just mindless writing, it was productive as hell, man. It was solid. I was reading it back and I'm going, all right, man, this needs some punching up, but overall, there's a lot of good work here, in my opinion. You know, I think it's good to have an ego to a certain extent, to be aware, but also to be not quite so objective, if that makes sense. To be self-reflexive and not quite as narcissistic. But my point is with that is I had this writing down, and it was solid, at least to me. It was great. And then there was a slump where I wasn't writing for days, and I had that mindset where I'm thinking, oh man, like I'm thinking I'm falling behind. I need to be writing. I know I need to be writing. I got no one to blame but myself. And that's an important thing too, is that, you can't blame others or any other circumstances for what you want to do, man. If you want to do something, you're gonna find, and you really want to do it, my God, man, you're gonna find a way to do it. And if you're not gonna, then maybe you didn't want to do it. But my point is with that, is that I was thinking, I haven't written in days. I am falling behind on this. That's not, my imaginary deadline, not a literal deadline, but more so I need to be, thinking I need to be doing this and be writing this, and keep it going. And not having that. But totally negating the fact that the previous time that I took to sit down and to write were good sessions, man. It was good writing being done from a completely subjective point of view. That's how all art is. But there was a lot being put out, a lot of development made, and because I hadn't written in X amount of days, mentally, I got in the way of myself, forgetting about the solid work that I already had on paper. And when I came back, started writing a little bit more, then it's like, it's a rolling effect, man. It builds up and it builds up. What they're saying is that don't feel like if you're falling behind on what it is you want to do, that you're failing, because you're not. If you're writing something, or you're painting something, or you're whatever it is, man, whatever artistic endeavor that you have in your path, as long as you are consistently working at it to the point where you intend to finish it, you intend to go through the end, then that's what matters, man. Consistency is completely up to you. Maybe it is writing every single day, or doing your thing every single day. Maybe it is once a week doing a really good session or something, whatever it is, man. That is completely in the eye of the beholder. But the matter of fact is that is coming back to it, and is actually the idea of just, not saying, oh, well, I'll get back to it at some point, and then you never come back to it, man. And I've been guilty of the same thing too, so it's okay, because I've been guilty of that in my past, where I'm in the middle, I start working on something, and it's not clicking for me at that moment, and I go, well, I'll come back to it, and maybe I'll, find a new perspective on it, and then I never do, and then it sits there and it doesn't do anything with it. So the point is that even if you're not doing it every single day, you're not going at it, nonstop, every opportunity you can, as long as you have the goal and the passion for it, then that's what matters, man. By continually working at it, guys who want to be filmmakers, guys who want to be directors, and they're like, I can't be a director. I don't have actors. I don't have a camera. I don't have this or that. It's like, man, you're giving up before you even started, man. You got a telephone? There you go, man. You're a filmmaker. You don't got a telephone, all right? You go down to the store, you buy yourself a cheap little video camera. I can't afford it. Then you get the money to get that little camera. You don't got actors? Well, then you find a way around it, man. If you're really dedicated about something, you're gonna find a way to do it. You look at these filmmakers, and you think these successes happen overnight, man. They don't. You look at a guy like I mentioned before, like S. Craig Zahler. I mean, this guy, a lot of people only know him maybe only from his films, his 3 terrific films, directed films, that is, Bone Tomahawk, Brawl in Cell Block 99, and Dragged Across Concrete. 3 terrific films. But, look at all the writing that he's done. Look at the novels and the graphic novels and the music he's put out. He's a guy who is always working, always doing what he wants to do, and it builds up over time, man. These things don't just happen overnight. Shit, I mean, hey, man, look at Kyle Edward Ball talking about Skin and Merrick, COVID happening, man, and he's like, man, I'll be in this house, I'll make this little movie, and look at that, man, whether you like the film or don't like the film, it's playing theatrically, it's getting a lot of buzz, that whole argument of, people talk about that film, or, a movie like the Blair Witch Project, and they go, oh, well, anyone can make that film. It's like, yeah, man, anyone could make it, and someone did, what's your excuse, Anyone can make anything they want to do, as long as they put their mind and heart to it, man. That's all that counts, man. Just get rid of all the nonsense excuses. Stop saying, and I understand we all have different circumstances. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different opportunities. But ultimately, we all have the same 24 hours, man. And if you have 2 minutes a day to work on your art, then you're 2 minutes further than you were yesterday. And that builds and builds and builds to 10 minutes, to a half hour, to an hour. It just goes on, man. No excuses for that kind of nonsense, man. You only got this life to live, man. So don't waste it by sitting around doing nothing, man, and wondering where your time went. Recently in mind, in a weird kind of coincidence, I ended up watching two films from two filmmakers, two of my favorite filmmakers, bigger films, quote unquote, that I hadn't seen previously, and two of my favorite, actually, in another coincidence, comedic filmmakers, Woody Allen, the great Woody Allen, and the great Preston Sturges. Because I don't quite believe in the whole when people seeing these big films like you haven't seen this film, you haven't seen that film. No, man, there's plenty we all haven't seen. The idea you haven't seen that, you haven't seen Citizen Kane, Casablanca. It's like, well, if you haven't seen those films, you should see them. You don't want to see them, it's nonsense, man. The amount of times people come to me, you haven't seen this film, man? No, man, I'm a fan. Doesn't mean I've seen every single film, I only got X amount of time on this planet, so I'll watch what I want to watch in the time I got to watch it. But two of the Woody Allen films that are well revered that I had never seen previously were Annie Hall from 1977, as well as Hannah and Her Sisters from 1986. And both films lived up to their reputation. Annie Hall was a terrific film. I had always known about it, of course, and just I think it's a quintessential Woody Allen film. Plenty of it's a film I don't need to go too in depth into or anything like that, but it's pretty much when you think of Woody Allen not only as director but as an actor, that is a film where his where his mannerisms, what people reference to in terms of his acting, his dialogue, his influences. There's a whole great bit about a person in line at the cinema complaining about Fellini that Woody Allen is kind of rolling his eyes at. It's quintessential Allen, and of course, I think most people have probably seen it, as well as Hannah and Her Sisters. Actually, in Annie Hall, where there's a part they're talking about seeing a Bergman film, and then you watch Hannah and Her Sisters, and you got Max von Sydow in the film, along with Michael Caine, and you have Diane Keaton again. You have Mia Farrow. You have Barbara Hershey. I'm sorry, not Diane Keaton. My apologies. That's Diane Wiest. I'm getting the names mixed up. Carrie Fisher's in the film as well. But solid film as well. And when it comes to Preston Sturges, I had watched after. Oh, you know what, man? I completely apologize. I just, in this one moment here, I got my filmmakers mixed up. I did not mean to say Preston Sturges. I meant to say. Actually, I'm going to completely contradict myself, man. Maybe I did not mean to say anything. I just got Preston Sturges and Howard Hawks mixed up for a second there, because I had seen two films of theirs, one film of each recently I've been wanting to see for quite some time, but in that moment, I got those two mixed up, so I do apologize. But I will mention, I watched Christmas in July from Preston Sturges, 1940. The film stars Dick Powell and Ellen Drew, and what a terrific film, man. I've only seen maybe a handful of Preston Sturges films, and all of them, man, have been fantastic. Yeah, probably actually been less than a handful. I've seen Sullivan's Travels, Christmas in July, and The Miracle of Morgan's Creek. All three of them fantastic films. I own The Lady Eve, which I haven't seen yet, but I've heard great things about. Unfaithfully Yours is one I've been wanting to see. But Christmas in July, it's just a solid comedy overall. You have Dick Powell who's working in this, what is this? He's like I don't remember exactly where he worked, but there's a contest for a slogan, this coffee slogan, and Dick Powell, he has the idea to put his name, to put his slogan in, and try to win this. I think was like $25,000 or something like that. So basically, he some of his coworkers, they trick him, and they put up this fake letter, and it's like, man, you won. What the hell was the slogan? It was, if you can't sleep at night, it isn't the coffee, it's the bunk, And they have a whole great back and forth about it, about what that means, about what the scientists said, and it's a situation where they get in over their head, where Dick Powell's character, he starts to spend this money. Everyone's like, man, you won the competition. You're great. Even his boss is like, I'm going to fire you. But, oh, man, you won this competition, man. You're great. Everything's going to work out for you. And it's a great thing because you're waiting for, it's one of these great films. You're just waiting for the ball to drop. This can't last long. You're waiting for the moment. But my gosh, man, Preston Sturges, the way that he directs his actors. He can make this very silly, very silly comedies, but he has real heart to these characters because you really like Dick Powell. He's a good guy, man. He's got a good heart. He just wants to do right, wants to treat people right. Even his girlfriend Betty, played by Ellen Drew, she's saying, "You think you're spending too much money?" And he's like, "Man, I got the money. I'm gonna spend it on what I love, man. I want the people that I love." And that's what I love about Preston Sturges as a filmmaker. The way that he directs, the way that he writes, the way that he directs his actors. There's such a great human quality to all that I've seen of him. You know. I mean, you look at like Sullivan's Travels, man. The heart in that film alone is something unparalleled, man. That whole sequence at the end of that film, I can only imagine how many filmmakers that influenced in terms of making their art. I'm actually right now currently reading Preston Sturges' half autobiography. I'm only halfway through, but I think part of it is an autobiography. Part of it, I think towards the end is something else. I think a book may have been unfinished. Not exactly sure. But he's one of these guys, man. You just watch one of his films, even above, just getting, the fast talking dialogue out of the way, which is great. Even though it's, talking about Howard Hawks before, I was more associated with Hawks, but get that out of the way. You have really just smart, witty dialogue, really likable characters, and I think that's one of these things where that's kind of what cements Preston Sturges as such a great comedic filmmaker. Just the way that he directs the actors and such likable characters, man, in all of his films. Sullivan's Travels as well, if you haven't seen it, I can only recommend that so much, man. That's another great film. You have Joel McCrea, the great Joel McCrea, man, from, was it Ride the High Country, and just so many great Foreign Correspondent, of course. Come on, man. You guys ever see Ride the High Country? You gotta see that film, man. It's one of his best. But anyways, you have that film where he wants to make Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But they're telling him, they're like, "Man, you have been a rich kid all your life. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know anything about living out there, about being poor." And he's like, "You know what, man? I'm going to go out there, I'm going to live on the railroad, I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to do my thing so I can relate to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" You have Veronica Lake in the film as well, the beautiful Veronica Lake as well, from many great films, I Married a Witch, This Gun for Hire, Actually, I Married a Witch, I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard many great things about it. And you have just this great adventure film, Joel McCrea and Veronica Lake, they just bounce off each other so well. And what I was saying before with Preston Sturges is that on one hand, you have this really funny comedy, there's plenty of great sequences. We have some of the Hollywood guys following him around to make sure he's okay, and he's like, "Nah, man, you gotta leave me alone, man. I don't want any help. I'm gonna do my thing, and when I get back, I'll have learned about life, and I'm gonna make this damn movie, man." And then you get to the third act, and there's a heart and a warmth of cinema that is unparalleled. You see so many films where the quote-unquote, where the point of the film isn't cinema great, isn't it just, it's very obvious, and which is fine. There's plenty of films like that where the whole point is, isn't cinema great, and that's fine, that's great. Like, hey, man, I enjoyed The Fabelmans, it was fine, but it was about on the nose as it could be, man. You get to this film, and it hits you at the last second. It's a film like, you guys ever see, Be Kind Rewind with Jack Black and Mos Def? That's a film as well. You get the silly comedy, these fun adventure moments, and then you get to the end. And then you get that moment where you have, just like Sullivan's Travels, you have these characters watching this film, just reveling in the cinematic experience, the theatrical experience, not necessarily at a theater, but just that whole group collective of being in a room, taking in these images, these sounds, man. Everyone in that room is feeling something different, but ultimately, you are all binded by that piece of cinema that you are watching, man. It is something unparalleled in any other art form. I find music and literature to be a very personal experience, and that's not to say that film isn't as well, but let me just tell you this, man. You get a whole packed cinema, man. I'm talking about 2023, you get a whole cinema filled, every seat filled, there will be no seat left unfilled. People eating popcorn, drinking cola, their loved ones, their friends, and you put on this film, man, and the audience is one with the art of cinema, man, and that's what it's all about, man. That is what the whole experience of great artists like Preston Sturges, like Howard Hawks, like Woody Allen, these great artists of our time, man. Well, I say of our time, I say of the 20th century, but it's unparalleled, man. Do yourself a favor. And even in contemporary things, go back to the start of the episode. Sarah Polley is another great artist. You sit in that cinema, you watch that film, and you go, "Man, I feel the power of this film, man." So do yourself a favor. Check out Christmas in July. Check out Sullivan's Travels. Check out Annie Hall. Check out Hannah and Her Sisters, Women Talking. These are all great films, man. And you're going to walk away with your own feelings that may or may not influence the rest of your life in ways you don't even realize it while you're watching it, man. Jeez Louise, man. Alright, well, the day is still young. We got so much to do. We're not going to sit around and waste it. We're going to work on what we got to work on, man. So at the end of the day, the week, the month, the year, we're going to look back and go, did we get what we wanted to get done? Done. And that's up for you to decide, man. Alright, you guys take care, and I'll be back next week.